All right, you guys should be good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jason.
No problem.
So I guess we'll call this meeting to order. Call the Southborough Golf Committee meeting to order here at a little after 9 o'clock. I will first apologize to everyone in attendance for us not succeeding in actually having a meeting last week, since we were struggling with various Zoom and meeting setup issues. But I think we're getting over those issues, and so hopefully this will be a successful meeting. We have all three current committee members here, so I think we have a quorum. Ira, thanks for putting up the agenda. Do you guys have any comments on the agenda?
Nope.
Okay. The only thing I think maybe I would add is we'll just, after the approval of the minutes, why don't we just look at that course usage summary that we received from the town. So that would be worth looking at. So, okay. Why don't we approve minutes?
Okay, so I'm going to find them. I'll guide you through this because it's 2 pages and it's wordy.
Okay.
But you can read it. I didn't send it out in advance. When we did it, roughly who was there, I didn't name everybody by name. I took down a bunch of names, but I limited.
Hey, Ira, are you going to show the minutes or are you going to just talk through them?
Are they not showing right now?
I don't see them. Do you see them, Nick?
They're on my screen, yes.
Well, what does that mean? I don't see them.
Tony's broken.
How can that be?
Jason, do you see them? He's not there anymore.
No,
let me stop sharing and I'll reshare.
Okay, yeah, because what I saw was the agenda still.
Okay. Tell me to see them now.
Now I can see them. Thank you.
All right, so I've learned a lesson. I can only share one thing at a time. So here are the minutes. There's the date, a summary of who was present. We called to order at 9. We sort of mooted the previous meeting's minutes because you guys hadn't been involved in that. The next section is a report on how we organized ourselves. We unanimously elected Tony as chair. Nick became vice chair. I remain as secretary. We looked at the meeting cadence going forward, and we'll have to address that again today. But basically, we agreed for the time being to try to go every 2 weeks. And then we got into our listening section. I'm going to scroll a bit. Dealing almost exclusively with the concerns of neighbors on Lattisquama Road. And I tried to summarize it as best I could. I didn't take every comment in here, but I included the concerns about hole number 8 teeing area, the major concern pertinent to hole number 7, and stray tee balls incursioning, coming over and hitting people's property and materials and threatening persons themselves. And I mentioned that even on hole number 6, there is a neighbor who's at the corner of McNeil Road who reports that her house gets hit now and then, probably off the number 6 tee. We discussed several potential mitigation steps. I believe we're going to continue that discussion today. Mostly we were in listening mode, just trying to understand what was going on. Whoops, sorry. Can't help myself. Every time I click, something happens. There was additional public comment. Lynn McKay, representing the Women's League that plays on Mondays, let us know how well they are doing this year and provided us with a punch list of concerns that they had, which I tried to replicate here. I'm not sure I got all the items, but I think I got at least most of them, including designating both bathrooms in the clubhouse for both genders, trying to institute a plaque or a sign acknowledging that the Assabet Valley Technical High School students were responsible for building the clubhouse. She asked for table umbrellas for the deck tables, etc. And I detailed them down there. If I missed any, I'm sure we'll fill them in. Then Sam Stivers, representing himself, but with the knowledge of a select board member, suggested that when we get to the issue of paving the driveway and parking lot, that we try to coordinate it with Department of Public Works, larger projects, so as to gain advantages of critical mass rather than trying to do a one-off. And he indicated that an earlier concern about rainwater runoff is mitigatable. We didn't get into detail as to how. And then this last section is required of me when I submit the minutes. Any documents that we referred to in a meeting have to be attached. So I will attach the email received from the attorney on behalf of Ladisquama residents and the email that we received from Mr. Engel regarding number 8 T-Bucks. And that's it.
Thank you, Ira. Nick, do you have any comments on the minutes?
They look accurate from my recollection of the meeting.
All right, I don't have any comments either. So unless we have an objection amongst the three of us, I think we'll consider these to be approved. So thank you, Ira, for preparing those. Nick, would you be willing to take minutes for today?
Sure.
And then we can talk a little bit offline, but the minutes can be pretty brief. And so, but we can talk about that a little bit offline.
Yeah, generally I agree. Because we had so much public comment, I wanted to do that justice.
Absolutely. No, so thank you for doing that, Ira. Thank you very much. So next, why don't we just, if you wouldn't mind, Ira, just quickly put up that chart that at least I think Sam shared with us about the golf course usage, just so everyone can see kind of how significant the growth has been over the last few years.
Yep. Can you see it?
Yes.
Is it okay? So this is, we received an original copy from Mark Purple, and this is a version of it that Sam Stivers sent through recently. And Tony, if you want to comment on
no, I just think it's notable that it continues to grow in such a healthy way, which is wonderful, obviously. And what it's up 20% for sure, year over year, 2021 to 2022. So that's just very encouraging. So, you know, it's great that so many people are using this course. The course has made such progress over the last few years. So this is just, you know, it's great to see these numbers. Any other discussion about that?
No, I agree. I hope it justifies whatever argument we're going to make down the road for capital improvements as a result of things like the neighborhood concerns.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
stop sharing that since I can only share one thing at a time.
Yeah. All right. So then moving on in the agenda, let's see.
Next item says investigate proposed actions to mitigate neighbors' concerns.
Right. And so maybe let's see, I think John and Bill, maybe you could add them as panelists, Ira, so that they can participate in this discussion.
Oh, I can click the allow to talk, and that apparently does the job. Cool. And I have, for just purposes of our being able to make this tangible, I have a Google Maps instance up that I'll share in a minute, just of the area that we are mostly chatting about.
Yep. So John and Bill, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, why don't you, Ira, put up that map just so everyone can see what we're sort of talking about here.
I'm going to try to do it as soon as I figure out how to click all the right buttons. Is it visible?
I see it. Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously I can zoom, but this, for orientation, this is the 7th green. Just a little bit smaller. 7th teeing boxes. And that's the primary area of concern, not the only area.
Right. So I think what we'll do here today is, I don't know, just brainstorm a little bit more about this. Then I think at some point we need to start writing down, write down some of the options that we think we should consider so that we can, at the very least, show them to the select board and let them weigh in on what some of the options might be. And I guess at some point we need to think about getting some cost estimates for what some of these options might cost. So for what some of these options might cost. Bill, do you want to comment a little bit about some of the things that have been discussed here over the last few months about ways of improving the situation?
Yes. Just briefly on the 6th hole, if you stand on the tee box now, back on 6, it's quite a large distance for balls to errant shots to hit property on, McNeil or Latticequama. We moved the tee box on 6. We planted a couple of trees up by the 6th tee. We moved the fairway left at least 20 yards. There's extremely high grass on the entire right side of the 6th hole now. That has to be 1.5 feet high to discourage balls from going over there. And of course, there's 80, 100-foot oak trees there. It's not to say that some balls will go over there, but a lot has been done over the years to minimize the number of errant shots going on those residents' property. And I think it's overall been successful. As I said, that in discussions with Mark Purple, Selectwoman, and others, that the play has increased almost double in the last 2 or 3 years, from 10,000 rounds when the course was under construction in 18 and to more than 20,000 rounds. So there's a lot more activity out there, and which will more likely result in a few more errant shots. On the 7th hole, the issue was addressed maybe 5 years ago or so with Ed on, I think it's 32 Latticequama. And if you see at the tee, there's an area of a white shaded area there to your left, a little more to your left, note down and to your left. That was the tee box that we took out of play. That used to be a tee there. We took that out of play and built a new tee, which you can see further to your right, up further right there. And that was resulted in a fairly significant reduction of errant golf balls going out onto the residents of Latticequama. There's still balls that go out of there, and we've proposed moving the existing tee box, which is the white tee and the blue tee, those 2 tees right there, and shift them over to the right along the fence there. Alternately, they could be moved up a little closer as well in front of the existing tee as well as an option. I would defer to the opinion of the architect as to which location is preferred to minimize errant shots. The cost of that project for, it's a short money, maybe $3,000 or so for the architect to come out, review it, provide construction documents, maybe, and then the construction of the tee may be in the vicinity of $12,000. So all told, it's probably about a $15,000 cost to put in the new tee. And quite frankly, I think it'll result in a substantial reduction of errant shots. Also looking at that 7th hole, there is a gap, maybe 3/4 of the way up, that doesn't have many trees at all. It looks like it's maybe more at the L and the road there, maybe at L and Lattisquama further up. But there is a gap there we looked at that some fencing or netting could be put up there, which would also help of errant shots going over there. I think the combination of those two things will be successful in reducing the number of errant shots. We have huge oak trees, providing a lot of protection. I'd be surprised if many balls get over there untouched, meaning that errant shots will deflect off the trees, bounce on the street, and bounce into people's property. But it's pretty tough to, not to say it doesn't happen, but when you move the tee over there with the new tee, I would be surprised if there were many direct shots that would go into the neighbor's property. So that's probably the easiest, simple thing to do. I think you'd need some kind of approval from Sudbury Valley. The other option, which is a lot more expensive and also has some issues, would be to move the green slightly to the left where the existing bunkers are in that area. That would be, probably, $75,000 expense or more. And you still have issues with errant shots that may go further left into people walking down the 8th hole. And there's some golfers that aren't very good, and you also run the risk of errant shots coming off the 8th tee that could impact players if you move the green too far left. So I think that addresses most of the issues, and the new tees could be done fairly quickly with a view towards doing them in the fall and in October or something, and they be ready for the next golf season.
Thank you very much. I had thought about some of that as, oh, I'm getting the YouTube feedback, aren't I? Okay. I had thought about many of the same things. I had not thought about the repositioning of the tee boxes as you are describing, and I think that's a better idea than any other I've heard. As folks are aware, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to fill in a couple of other notions that have been floated. I think Bill's is the best I've heard those thus far. The attorney who wrote on behalf of several of the neighbors had, if I understood the letter correctly, advocated moving the tee up and to the left as we see it here. So coming into an area like this, we discussed that briefly the last time we got together, and I actually tried playing it that way once just as a one-off experiment. I don't think that really addresses the issue, because if anything, it makes the target line bring these houses more into play than less.
That is correct. The architect confirmed that. I called the architect that did the design work on holes 1 and 9 at Southborough, Stephen Kay. He looked up on Google Maps, he looked at it, and he said that would be a mistake to move the tee on the left side of that hole in any area.
Right, agreed. The one other issue, and I don't want to dilute this discussion, but at some point we have to bring into account, Bill had mentioned fencing up in the area approaching the green. I agree. There are few, if any, trees blocking that, whereas these big trees prevent doing some major fencing thing. But the other concern that was raised last year before the current committee was in place, there is a resident who was struck by a golf ball and hurt. And she was walking somewhere along here. She could not report where she was when she got hit. But as a result of that, I walked the line and found a couple of gaps in the existing fencing, in particular in the area where a miss-hit approach shot to number 3 green could find its way out onto public land or private land. I think this is an independent issue, but I think when we make a recommendation, it probably should include closing those fencing gaps that currently exist. There are a few of them. Some of them may be more vulnerable than others. But again, I raise that now just because we're talking about this area. It's a separate issue, I think.
I would add that there's fencing in a lot of that area, say behind the 3rd green and also up by the 7th green. In those areas, the fencing should be extended from a height of maybe 15 or 20 feet to a greater height. And I think the problem area is if you go down by the 3rd green to the right, where it says Latticeguama Road to the right, there's no fencing there. And in Aaron's shot, which is the 3rd shot, there should be some fencing there. And again, doesn't have to be high, but 15 or 20 feet to catch a skull to Aaron's shot that could go, across the road, hit a car, hit a house, or hit a person. There should be look at some fencing there. There's existing fences where it says Latticeguama Road behind the 3rd. There is existing fencing there, but it should be extended maybe another 100 feet or so.
Yeah, that was what I brought back to the committee last time. And for what it's worth, I did measure the existing fencing. It averages about 12 feet. So it's conceivable that all of it, and some of it's in, somewhat old condition. So we might consider a refresh and possible raising a little bit of some of that. Anyway, sorry. Going back to Bill's recommendation, it's to move the white and blue tee boxes essentially behind this forward tee, which changes the line of target more away from the road, and maybe put some barrier, some fencing or netting in this area. Do we get I'm unaware of any complaints from balls going over the green and onto this property. And I know that this is a driveway used by us and maybe also by the resident there. I don't know.
No, they are not.
Just by us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Would you recommend putting a barrier behind the green?
I don't think it's necessary. I would be surprised if many balls go through there in the air. I mean, a shot, people hitting a long iron or a rescue club, that balls will go over the green, but I would see that they're rolling over the green, maybe rolling over the road over the driveway, but I don't see the need. We could put a small fencing there, 8 foot high, just to eliminate balls from going over, but I just don't see it's possible that house, it could ever get hit, as well as the house at 22 and the house at 26 very rarely hit. I think we addressed the issue with the homeowner to the tee at the 8th tee, whereby we put up some stakes and rope to prevent golf carts and people from encroaching on his property.
Yeah, and that was reported to him, and he acknowledged the report, and will get back to us if it's insufficient. But so far, no further news there.
Can I make a note on that thought of putting the netting there behind, or fencing behind that next to the asphalt there behind 7 green?
Mhm.
Is that another thing to note is that when you see Latticeguama Road where the D is, if you go straight, that's your property line there. So technically, anything to the right is probably about 25 feet. That's golf course property. right where that arrow is, approximately right there. That's where, you can see this, that's where the water line came in. See that strip? There's an asphalt strip right below the D.
Right.
That's where they came in with the water line. And I think the property line is actually like 10 feet or so north of that.
Understood.
Yeah, so just so you have a reference of where the property line actually is.
So that was a helpful discussion. I don't know, Nick, do you have any comments or questions about, everything that Bill and Ira just kind of walked through?
I tend to agree with everything we just suggested. I walked that as well and drove down Lattisquam and agreed there should be a little more barrier to prevent these errant balls flying around.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've all done the same thing now, and being out there, certainly moving the tees to the left would be the worst thing you could do. Moving them to the right makes an awful lot of sense. Repairing the fence, extending the fence along the road, maybe wherever you can, extending the fence higher, assuming that's what the neighbors want, would make an awful lot of sense. And certainly, I think any amount of moving the green to the left would have you aiming away from the road. And so I don't know how much we want to consider that, but certainly just aiming in a different direction would help as well. I guess if you guys are okay with this, I'd open it up to the public at this point, just to see if anyone else who's on the call here. I think a few neighbors might be on the call on this meeting right now. See if anyone else has any comments or questions at this point. If you could please raise your hand if you'd like to say something at this point.
I don't see any hands raised, but that may be my.
Yep, no, I don't either. Okay, well, we'll continue then. So maybe so it seems like what we should do is summarize, some of these options, so that we could share them with the select board and the neighbors, and have a written kind of document that shows what the possibilities might be. Bill, then we would need pricing. Is that something that you guys can estimate? What the various fencing options, what they might cost, and moving the tees, just like all of these individual elements. Can you guys provide price estimates?
I think it'd be best at this point to, and I know Stephen K. Doug Smith is going to be out here in the fall doing work for me or for the town of Lexington and Pine Meadows, and also for the town of Holliston at Pinecrest. When he's out here, to stop by and defer to him, to rely on him on the exact location of where he would suggest the tee go and where he would suggest additional fencing or netting would be, and he'd probably have a better idea on costs. I think my estimate, to move that tee for architectural service as well as construction costs is a good estimate of $15,000. If you're familiar, or once the architect says, here's where we want to put fencing and we want to replace the old, that's 12 feet and increase it to 20 feet, I can certainly get pricing for that. I would assume that you would have to go out to bid for the tee if it's more than $10,000. So you'd need, bid documents from the architect and not me just calling 3 contractors and getting a price.
Okay. Is it possible to have the architect come out sooner than this fall?
Yes.
I think it'd be good if we could to, keep moving this along.
Sure.
So if you could contact it, what's this person's name again?
The firm is Stephen K. Doug Smith Golf Course Design.
Okay.
And they've done a nice job for me over the years. And Stephen Kay, who is the principal of the firm, is since retired or on the verge of retiring, and he did all the work associated with the first and ninth holes. So his associate, Doug Smith, would probably be the one that would come out and take a look at it. But I'll try to get Stephen to come out because Stephen has had a lot of experience testifying in cases involving this and is quite familiar with the width of fairways and how far away they should be from houses and so forth. So I'll try for Stephen, but I think Doug will be just as qualified, where Stephen can get the information from Google Maps.
Okay. Well, that would be great, Bill, if you
Okay.
could, get them to come sooner rather than later.
Sure.
And just so we can hopefully get some momentum going on these topics. If you could let us know when he or they show up, maybe one or more of us would try to be there too, just to listen to the discussion. That would be great.
Okay, and we're going to look at the location of the tee and where he feels additional netting should be installed. And at what height.
Yeah, I think those would be the primary topics. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion at this time on mitigating neighbors' concerns?
One other item that came up last time in our listening to the neighbors element, and I heard and agree with what Bill said. I think number 6 has largely been mitigated, but clearly it's not 100% yet. Somebody raised the notion of just putting up a sign at the number 6 tee, advising golfers who hit bad slices for a righty to yell 4, which seems to me to be A, sort of unnecessary. You're supposed to do that, and B, I'm not sure if our fellow golfers read signs well, but that had been raised, so I just want to mention it. And a sign doesn't cost us much money. If there's any thought on that, I don't have an opinion.
Yep. What do you think of that, Bill?
It's not a big deal to put up a sign. They're relatively inexpensive, but I just don't think it'll help the situation. But if the committee feels it's worthwhile, I'll certainly.
Yeah, I have to admit, I agree. I'm not sure a sign.
People don't know, when they hit that ball, they have the excuse, well, I didn't see it, I lost it, and you wouldn't guess it's going to have any thinking that you hit the ball that bad where it's going to clear the trees and hit a house or the street. It's just pretty difficult to do.
Okay, well, we'll table that for now, but maybe we'll come back to it another time. Any other discussion right now on the neighbors' concerns? Okay, excellent. Well, that was a helpful discussion. So I'll summarize a little bit what some of these options are. Bill, let us know when the architect can show up, and we'll keep talking about this in each meeting. So that sounds good. We'll move on to the next agenda topic then, the committee charge of duties. So Ira, I think, do you have something you can show here that is?
I believe I do. Let me see if I can find it. Yep, I found it. Now all I have to do is figure out how to share. Is this it? No. Got it. So this is off the town website. I assume you can see it. And it's a bullet list of our duties, some of which we are well on our way to handling, and others, I'll just let you read it. will note there is a master plan that was published in 2019, I believe. I have a hard copy of it, but not an electronic copy. It was handed to me back when I first started with this thing. I think we all ought to take a look at that. I can make physical copies of it for the next time we have a physical meeting. Or I can find out if there is a soft copy somewhere.
How many pages is that master plan? I mean, I would certainly happily scan it in. Do you have a sense? How big is this master plan?
I seem to recall it being a PowerPoint of some 20 to 30 pages.
Hmm.
You know, single-sided
Yeah.
PowerPoint stuff.
So I'll tell you what, I will coordinate with you and pick that up, and I will scan it in and share it with you guys.
Okay, I'll see if there's probably a soft copy that exists somewhere. I just don't know where.
Okay. Be good to see what people in the past thought. And then if we need to, and it's, I guess it's entirely possible we'll need to work on updating a master plan. So that makes sense. A scorecard. So Bill, I think you're still on the call here. Has a scorecard ever been created for the management company's performance?
I don't believe so. We do have in the contract certain standards that have to be maintained in the management and maintenance of the golf course. And I would imagine that'd sort of be a start.
Yeah. All right. So I think we could, and I guess it's a contract that's an annual contract, like aligning with a calendar boundary.
It's actually a 3-year contract, I
Oh, it's a
believe.
3-year contract. And how far into the 3-year contract are we now?
This is the first year of the newly addressed contract.
And on what date was the contract signed?
I believe January, but Bill knows better than I do.
Yeah, I believe it was signed this year, and I just don't recall whether it's 3 or whether it's 5, but I'll confirm that with you.
Yeah. I think since our duties described here, we should have a scorecard. We will have to come back to this. I think we could create an annual scorecard as a point of discussion with the management company. So I think that's a good idea. So maybe we could leave this charge of duties on our agenda here for a while, Ira, so we can, be reminded to come back to some of these topics. I think
I agree. Let me, this is just from imperfect memory, but I recall a couple of things from the master plan that we did begin to tackle as a committee. We began to talk about as a committee last year. One was irrigation, specifically the problem area in the 3rd and 4th fairways that dries out. Another one was an aspirational goal of adhering to Audubon Conservancy guidelines.
Yep.
There were many others that I simply do not recall right now. So I mentioned the ones that I recall, but we'll get our hands on that and review it. And I agree, updating it is probably the appropriate thing for us to do.
Yep. Okay. The committee should identify opportunities for increasing revenue. Yeah. So that's an interesting topic as well.
There was some discussion about that last year, pertinent to coordinating, for instance, with recreation and other committees, for instance, getting youth involved. I believe that has been done independently of us. I believe there is a current youth program. And obviously, revenue is going up without us waving our magic wand.
Yeah, we have worked with the Recreation Department this year in providing junior instruction during the summer season, and it's been easy to and nice to do now that we have the new putting green that the town built, constructed last year. as well as the 2 hitting stations that are used for conducting these clinics. We've also worked with the town. They had asked for some special promotion to consider, and I said, fine, and we're running a promotion for the month of July, a special $10 greens fee if you tee off between when we open 6 or 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and that seems to be well received by a lot of people and gain some new faces. So that's good. My secretary always says, don't discount too much, provide great customer service and great golf course conditions so that people will come. And that seems to see what we've happened over the last couple of years. As I've mentioned to the town, the increase again is attributable to a number of factors. A number of courses in Metro West have closed over the last few years, which has been good for Southborough. And COVID was a big boom for the entire golf industry as well. And the rain was a big plus last year, not for a lot of courses, but for Southborough, because it kept the entire golf course green through the whole season. So that was good too. So things are going well. It'd be nice to get the irrigation done, as that would be a great improvement and well received by the public.
Yeah, and so that's, go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm finished.
Okay. So with that, then I was gonna, maybe we can invite Sam. Can you promote Sam so that he can talk here, Ira?
Yep.
Hopefully Sam doesn't mind joining.
You should be able to talk now, Sam.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Morning, Sam. Thanks for joining. So yeah, since we'll just transition to the irrigation in the parking lot. We touched on this a little bit last week, but I think you've thought more about this than the rest of us have. So can you help us understand how we take good steps on the irrigation and the parking lot?
Yeah, happy to comment. I guess as an individual, as folks may know, I'm a member of the select board, so we've not actually addressed this in terms of an official select board position. So these are my individual comments, but I have looked at this, and it seems to me that there are obviously 2 water sources. One, town water, which I think a number of people have been focused on, and second is possibility of a well. And I know folks have looked into that as well. And I think that one of the ideas that I had at some point in the past was to think about using MWRA water out of the Sudbury Reservoir, untreated water, which would presumably be less expensive than hooking into town water, which is drinkable. And it turns out I've actually talked with some of the MWRA folks about that. That's not a realistic possibility for a variety of reasons. On the other hand, given that we're right next to the reservoir, it would seem to be an interesting possibility to drop a well somewhere in that general area and see what's down there. And again, I realize that's not a no-cost option. I don't know what a well costs, a test well, but it's something that might be an interesting thing to do. And I guess my bottom line on it is I think it would be great, whatever we do in terms of a water source, to think about a design that leaves the capacity for an option for the feed there, 1 town water, 1 well water, somehow, if it's possible to do that. I think that would give us the most flexibility going forward. And I realize haven't even launched on a design process. Maybe Bill and his team have looked at a number of these possibilities and have some ideas about this, but I think it would be good to leave that option open for a well-driven system at some point in the future, if that's not the first thing that we do. And again, Bill, I don't know, I've heard indirectly that you folks have looked at that, and I'd be interested to hear any thoughts or suggestions you have about what the best water source is.
Yes, we did look at it a number of years. I had DL Mar come out, which is, I think, pretty well known in Massachusetts for finding and constructing wells. He surveyed I walked the whole property with the geologist, hydrologist, whatever. and found that a good location happened to be to the right side of the 5th hole, which is the closest proximity to the reservoir there. He identified, looking at maps and plans and so forth, and white pines that were there, he thought that would be the best location to do a test well. But in getting the costs, I mean, the cost of the test well alone can vary depending on the depth of how far you're going to have to go to obtain water and obtain sufficient water. So that number was, again, in 10,000 or more, just to get to the point of doing a fairly deep test well. The problem going forward, though, once you get the water, you know, whether it's 30 gallons or 40 gallons a minute or whatever it may be, we don't know until the test well is done, is where you're going to put that water, which in most cases that means putting it into a holding pond. So you'd have to, you know, find the location of the pond, you know, put a liner in the pond. Probably the pond would have to be big enough to accommodate a sufficient amount of water to irrigate the golf course. Expensive permitting for all this work would be expensive. And then once you had the holding pond there, you would need a pump station to pump the water out of the holding pond through the golf course. So it's clearly in the vicinity of 150, 200,000 probably to develop that. 50,000 for the pump station, you know, 75 or $100,000 for the pond, and then the well. So that is the ideal situation long term. But again, I think there's issues with Sudbury Valley and the permitting process, as well as the expense to accomplish that. If you did that, you'd probably have to design a more expensive irrigation system as well. I was on the committee at Woodland. We just put a new irrigation system in there. It was $2.9 million. I also was involved to some extent and did it at the Florida course I remember at, and that was $2.7 million. So if you look at the design of the system that you have, that I received from Turf Products, it's just a simple system for principally a single row of irrigation. In certain areas, we did do a double row to keep the golf course green during those, you know, dry seasons of the summer months. So it's a relatively, you know, simple system. Most people would not design a single row system now because the coverage isn't great. Most new systems are 5 rows. That also irrigates the rough. The single row will not irrigate the rough, which is why the cost of the system that's proposed is in the vicinity of $500,000 or $600,000 instead of millions of dollars. If you went the other option, that's using town water. If you didn't use the town water and you had unlimited supply of water, I mean, that would be great. But you'd probably design a double or triple row system, which most golf courses are now, which would be a lot more expensive.
Very helpful. Thanks, Bill. And again, it seems to me that it would be worth looking at cost, given the numbers that you quoted. One could actually put that into a fairly simple financial model to say, I'm just making this up, that in fact, the payback for doing a well-driven holding pond driven system, the payback is 100 years or some crazy number out there, given that your water cost is lower, but the upfront cost is substantial. That might be an interesting thing to look into in terms of modeling to address the issue clearly for folks and say, we looked at it and the payback just doesn't make sense for the kind of thing we're doing. We don't need, the full luxury system here. If we can make do with one that provides what we need and supports the play reasonably better during the dry seasons, et cetera, the lower cost approach makes a lot of sense. So I think having some more detail on that could be helpful going down the road, but that's not maybe immediate term, but I'd be interested in being able to come back to residents with a story that says, we looked at it, it doesn't make financial sense for these reasons. And then we'll move forward in whatever direction makes sense with that analysis. Just a suggestion, again, not something we need to do today or next week, but I think that question will come up.
It makes a lot of sense to me. Does anyone among us on the committee or within the committee's reach have expertise that we could employ to go after the kind of analysis that Sam is suggesting?
Our capital planning committee has a lot of this kind of expertise on it. This particular project, I don't think, is on the capital plan at this point. So normally you would have to, be on the list for them to consider. We might look at that. There are a couple of residents who have provided support for these types of questions historically on a one-off kind of basis. So it might be possible to convince somebody with a financial modeling background to take a look at it potentially. So I'd be happy to look into that, see if there are any likely candidates for that, if the committee is interested in pursuing that.
Well, that would be great, Sam, if you wouldn't mind doing that, just to see if there's someone who would be willing to help. Yeah, create a little model, as you described, of how, what the expenses and payback might be for, one of these possible irrigation systems. So that'd be great, Sam, if you can help us come up with a name.
Okay, I'll work on that. And Bill, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like you're suggesting that the single row system you believe is sufficient to support substantial increase in play during dry seasons here, and that given the numbers you've seen, that you don't have much doubt that that's the right way to go, as opposed to thinking about a more elaborate system with a well-driven source, et cetera. Is that fair to say?
I think the system that we proposed accomplishes two things. The existing system right now is old, it's leaky, it's inefficient, it's manual, it requires a tremendous amount of labor for people to run around and turn on these sprinkler heads on every single tee and green. So it's wasting water and it's very labor intensive. So the new system, which is relatively simple and relatively inexpensive, will accomplish a number of things. It'll reduce the amount of labor that's involved in watering. It'll water more efficiently because of increased pressure that you'll get from a booster pump rather than just from the town water. And we'll be able to water the course faster and more efficient. And it'll keep the course in the fairways. The greens are beautiful. The tees are very nice. It'll keep them in as good, if not better, condition that currently exist. At the same time, it'll provide better playing conditions on the fairways, particularly during the major part of the season by having this additional water. Needless to say, the water costs are going to double or even greater. So, whatever we're going to save in labor, we're going to pay in water, which is fine. But I think that's probably the best way to go for the town for what we have.
Mm-hmm.
My preference, ideally, I think it'd be great if the town would, spend the $1.5 million and have plenty of water, and we would have beautiful playing conditions on the fairways that you see at a lot of the upscale, public golf courses and private courses. That's what I would prefer, but I understand that there are limitations. So
hard to find that kind of money in the town budget these days.
I agree. Yeah, no, I understand those issues.
So you, just to remind me, you'd said it's several $100,000 to do what you had suggested.
For the irrigation?
Yeah, for the irrigation.
I sent a plan to the town. It was done, I believe, a year and a half ago or so. That irrigation costs, as you can well expect, are probably almost double from where it was 2 years ago when it was done. Maybe it's a little softer now, but I believe the material costs will be about $250. The labor installation is probably going to be between $500,000 and $600,000 to put in that irrigation system. You need a booster pump and also some additional power.
How long would it take to install that if we decided we wanted to do that?
Well, I've been sort of pushing it for the last year. Let's get it out there so we could get it done in the fall, and they would do it in October, November, December, and have it ready for next year. But again, you don't know how busy the contractors are at this point. But it's just a single row. It's not terribly disruptive, and there's enough contractors out there that could do a fairly simple system. It's not like a $2 million job that there's only a limited number of people that are out there that has the crew and the manpower to do it on a fairly fast basis without disrupting play.
Yeah. And how does that get paid for? Did you have a proposal for that? I haven't seen that report.
There was no, it was just discussed with Mark going back maybe 2 years ago that made the suggestion in effect it would pay for itself over time. That the town would float the bonds. At the time the money was cheap. It was probably 2% or more to borrow for the town, and they'd float the bond. And again, the number back then was more like 400 or 500 instead of 600,000 or more. And that the revenue would increase. Right, greens fees you could afford to go up $1 or $2 in greens fees and so forth to cover the annual amortization of the bond.
Okay, I'll track Mark down and get a copy of that proposal.
I don't think there was anything really written. It was just we both felt that you do the 15-20-year bond, you throw out some numbers out there what the annual cost would be, and again, I think that the revenue to the town now is $50,000 to $60,000 and increasing. And I know there's other things that need to be done at the golf course, but it should be close to putting a pretty good dent in any bond payment.
So Sam, if you track that report down, if you could please share that with us again, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And
that's a calculation that we could make pretty easily in terms of what kind of
then we
payment stream.
We do the math then. So
thanks.
Okay, that's great. And on the parking lot, Sam, so how do we take, what's the next productive step to take on the parking lot?
Again, I have not talked with the DPW about this specifically, but I had heard at one point that Mark and Karen Galligan have discussed this, and it seems to me that there is an intent to get that done as part of a paving project that the town is working on. So I'd suggest that maybe, Tony, you're the right person to follow up with Mark and Karen to say the committee remains very interested in this, and can you provide an update on what you expect to happen here? I know Karen is working on some paving contracts at this point for some other projects, so she may have some ideas about how to connect this with that activity as well. So, and again, as you'd mentioned, I think previously, Tony, the last look that the Conservation Commission took at the stormwater runoff calculations confirmed that the current design there is sufficient. Originally they thought they needed the pervious surface in the gravel lot there to make the stormwater calculations work. Now they believe that with paving there, the numbers still work, but the paving needs to be consistent with the design for the parking lot. So in other words, the grade on the parking lot and the road need to be correct to make all the numbers work. But at least they said that they thought it could work. So that's a good hurdle to get over. And then Karen needs to figure out what she needs to do from a paving project standpoint. So that's what I would suggest.
All right, perfect. I will take the action item then to follow up with Karen and Mark, and I'll report back to you guys. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Sam.
Can I just make a comment there on the parking lot? Just
absolutely.
So parking is very tight. If people went up there during the busy time, there's barely a space to be had, that they're actually almost outside the gate from time to time. When they pave the parking lot, they'll increase the number of spaces, dramatically, assuming it's going to be lined, which I think is important because people sort of park all over the place. But we also want to be able to see if they can get some spaces at that entrance before you get to the main parking lot, whether it's paved or otherwise, just to accommodate sufficient cars.
You mean
Overflow.
along the driveway, Bill?
Yeah, so as soon as you drive through the gate, cars park on the left there.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be paved, there's some grass, there's some driveway, then there's grass to the left where the fence is. We'd like to be able to squeeze in, 7 or 8 spaces, in there as well.
Good point for Tony to follow up on
Yeah.
with Karen then.
Yep, that's a great point. I have also wondered, how would we get more parking up there? So I will take that up with Karen and Mark. So that's perfect. Anything else on the parking lot? I propose we move to the next agenda item, and then any other matters properly before the committee. Are there any other matters we should discuss right now?
The only one that comes to my mind is trying to secure our next meeting date.
So why don't we do that right now? I think we've talked about doing this every 2 weeks. Is that okay with you guys? Ira and Nick, we do this every 2 weeks for a while.
Works for me. Yeah.
Then this day, so maybe we stick with Thursdays at 9 for a while.
Sure.
All right,
Yep.
so let's aim for next Thursday or two Thursdays from now at 9 o'clock.
Okay. I'll take care of the logistics.
Thank you. Any other matters we should discuss right now? And I will say, I'm going to try really hard to get us to have a 1-hour meeting each week. So I'm going to try to push us right along through our agendas. But anything else right now? Okay. I guess we can see if anyone in the public would like to comment, please raise your hand.
Hey, Tony, it's Sam
Yes.
again. Again, I just like to reinforce, I appreciate the good work that our new committee here is doing. Great opportunity here. And thanks to Bill and his team for weighing in on this. I think all of us stand to benefit from some of the things we're talking about here. And as Bill had suggested, I and others get a lot of hugely positive feedback from the public about the course, its availability, the programs, et cetera. I think COVID in a perverse way has pushed people outside, out to the outdoors, and a lot of people have found the course and found golf, and I think it's a great thing for the town. So I think we've got a great opportunity here to make some of these improvements and make the experience even better and open up the option for many more people take advantage of this great asset for the town. So thanks to all for the good work, and we'll try to get some of these things done. Thank you.
That's perfect, Sam. And I
Thank you.
agree with all that. I think this is going to be I think we're going to make a lot of good progress here. I think we are finished then. So, and I think someone has to move to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
And I will second. We are adjourned.
You need a roll call vote, Tony.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, roll
Technically,
call
sorry.
vote. So I guess so Nick, you have to say aye.
Aye.
And Ira,
Aye.
and I say aye. So we have voted unanimously to adjourn. Thank you, everyone who was on this call. And we'll do this again in 2 weeks.
Cool. I'll stop the recording, and Nick, Tony, just so you know, I'm arranging to meet with Jay Montico next week to get a handheld lesson into how to conduct this stuff.
That sounds great, Ira. All right, everyone, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Take care.